Welcome back in, everyone, after a short hiatus to the 70 Chipcast here on the Pro Football Enterprises YouTube channel. Please make sure you are subscribed to the Pro Football Enterprises YouTube channel. A lot of great content that Ben has been putting out in my absence. It's been a long few weeks since we've talked. Um, been battling illnesses along with some other stuff, so apologize for not releasing an episode anytime recently, but we're back at it. Draft talk is still rampant right now. Free agency, for the most part, at this point, is kind of probably taking a back seat. For a while, teams are not focused heavily on the draft, these pro days, and all that. So we're going to talk about our top choices here at seven, or potentially in a trade back scenario, and for the rest of the draft as well, where we're going to look at clusters of guys based on where we're currently picking, and again, potentially some trade backs as well. Before we jump into that, Ben, how are we doing this evening?
Man, I'm doing great. For those of you in the audience, Robertson got sick not once but twice since the last time we put out on a show. Two of my kids got sick as well as the wife. So, yeah, we're everybody's back healthy and happy again, and they're pretty sassy too. So we're glad to be back. But we're excited about the Commander stuff. Really appreciate everybody that's been tuning in and watching. And so let's get to it tonight, man. It's all draft talk tonight.
Yeah. A quick, excuse me. Some things are still lingering. Um, quick side note, quickly. We are getting new uniforms since last time we talked. That'll be coming out in about a week. Depending on when this gets uploaded. Uh, Speculation is it's going to look a lot similar to the throwbacks we wore this past year, the way the old uniforms looked. Josh Harris teased in the owners' meetings that it's going to be some sort of surprise, probably with the logo, is what I would have to guess. But based on the draft hat, everyone releases a draft hat or whatever. It's the same W, so I imagine that's going to be the primary. Maybe the helmet looks a little bit different with the logo or something like that, but I can't imagine it's going to be a massive sweeping change that's completely different. So that is unfortunate, but I will take a permanent uniform change to even something closely resembling the old look than what we currently have. I mean, that's nothing new in terms of my feelings about our uniforms over the past, gosh, it's been probably 4 or 5 years now. So a very welcome change on its way. No new free agency news. Just a lot of opinions being thrown out anonymously from league sources saying that we panicked and that they haven't been great signings. It's like, okay, yeah, unless you're willing to put your name to it, then keep your dang mouth shut. Worried about your own team. Not that I think that these have been excellent signings or anything. That they're just team changing. Like, oh well, now we're a contender. Like I don't. We've talked about it. They haven't been that, but they've just been solid overall signings. That again, we'll see what happens. Nobody knows. You could get the top two or three free agents. You have no idea how it's going to pan out for you though. Um, and then there was probably one other thing, but I can't remember what we had talked about just 5 minutes ago. Um, but yeah, those are the kind of the big things. The Brandon Ayuk thing, like that's probably going to drag on a lot longer. Kyle Shanahan said he's trying to get trade compensation for him. I know at this time that Adam Peters is not going to want to give up anything and also take on that contract. So I don't know what they're going to be looking for unless they eat a huge piece of his contract in terms of trade compensation. But if it's not us, someone else is going to stupidly give it to him. Um, so my opinion on that is it's going to drag out well into the summer. Before if we do get Brandon Ayuk, it's not going to be until well into the summertime.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. We've seen these things. It can happen to any team, but the 49ers and Commanders both, over the past 10 years have had their fair share of these things happening to them, unfortunately. Whether you blame the franchise for that or not, it depends on the situation. The uniforms, we'll take what improvements we can get. So if they get back to original colors, something from the 70s, 80s, early 90s, I'll be very happy with that part of it. And then maybe we can get a beautiful spanking new logo at some point instead of this kind of font W that we're currently stuck with.
Yeah.
And then listen, we talked about the free agent stuff, man. Listen, I don't know if that's Howie Roseman or Jerry Jones cracking on us, or if that's one of the hardballs. I don't know, man. Listen, it could be either hardball cracking on us. Who knows? But yeah, our free agent signings were fine. You and I talked all through that. I thought some of them needed to happen, others of them we're just fine. I was happy with what we did. I wasn't ecstatic, but I was happy with it.
Yeah.
I didn't see panic at all, and I didn't see revolving door stuff. I saw some good solid work being done.
Yeah. So that was it in terms of news from the past few weeks. Nothing major. So let's just go ahead and get right into what the heck we're going to be doing at seven. So I will say before I present this that this was kind of an idea that I had, but Mr. Ben Standig, that if you're in tune with any of the local reporters and everything like that, Ben Standig's been has done a great job for a long time. He released an article on Substack that kind of looked at it through a lens of, okay, if we're just looking at RAS score, because Adam Peters historically, given the last two drafts, has put a high emphasis on RAS scores when he drafts players. So if we look at it through that lens of, just who at the top of when we're looking at who's going to be selected at seven. If we look at just the prospects that have high RAS scores, like these would be the following players. And he did an article about this. This is with the lens that I was going to look through during last week's episode, but he kind of beat me to it since we didn't record last week. But
Well, I will say, and we love Standick, okay,
yes.
but you brought up Raz immediately after the season last year, back in the 25 off
Hmm.
season. So maybe, just maybe, I mean, I haven't gone back and researched Standig's articles. Maybe, just maybe, he's building off of you. So.
I mean, that's possible, but if you're not subscribed to his Substack, he does a great job. He does a lot of live videos and stuff. So
Yeah.
he's always put out great content. So, I want to give him credit where credit is due. Like, go check out. I pulled this right from his article. So, I'm not taking credit for any of this. Just this is his. I just wanted to pull it because, great minds think alike. So,
Yes. Yes, they do.
what he did is he took like who's a quote unquote good prospect for us to take and who's a great prospect for us to take based solely on RAS score and then where they kind of fall in that kind of range that we're looking for, right? So at seven, I mean, me and you talked about this. We've looked at several different mock drafts, and like the more we're doing this, so Mendoza's going number one. I feel like that's with 99.99999% certainty, right? Um,
Yes.
Arvel Reese is probably going to. All right, and then after that, who the heck knows? Like we have no idea. I'd say Reese at two is probably a 75% certainty
Yeah,
at this
probably.
point.
Yeah.
You know, but it could be Sonny Styles, it could be David Bailey, it could even be maybe a Ruben Bain. I don't know. I don't know who it would
Right.
be. Maybe uh, so. But if you take Reese and Mendoza off the board, after that there could be two offensive players taken. There could be no offensive players taken. I don't know, but my guess is that there's at least going to be a lineman uh, or Jeremiah Love or Carnell Tate that goes in the top seven, and a handful of these defensive players that we've thought, well, they're either not going to be there at seven, or we just, might not even be interested depending on the situation. They're going to be there at seven now. I think that's looking like a stronger and stronger possibility, just because the grad draft never goes the way we think it's going to go. So I threw out the scenario to you before we start recording. It's like, okay, if Baines, Tate, Downs, Delane, and Love are all sitting there at seven, but the rest of the guys are off the board here. Bailey, Reese, Styles, they're all off the board. Who the heck do you go with? Again, that's just one scenario I threw out, but like, do you go, even though all three of those guys in the good category are available, but Delane and Love are on the board? Like everyone loves Jeremiah Love, right? But he is a running back, and the staff takes a very practical, logical approach to contracts, to the RAS scores to positional value, would they go with a Mansour Delane over a Jeremiah Love in that scenario? Because of the positional value. Um, are they going to completely ignore if anyone is on this great list remaining? Are they going to even look at anyone that's on the good list? You know what I mean? So it's a very interesting thought experiment. When you're trying to get into their heads, Adam Peters and company, Dan Quinn and company, when you're trying to get into their heads and their thought process, it's like Ruben Bain. I look at Ruben Bain and I know he's got the short arm thing. I don't see a guy that's going to be a bust at the next level. I just do not foresee that happening. And granted, I'm not always 100% accurate with my, draft predictions and so forth in terms of players translating from college to pros. I don't look at or a guy like Ruben Bain and see a failure at the next level just because of short arms. I don't see that. I think this dude's going to be a monster at the next level personally. But even if he's not this high end prospect like that's top five worthy when it's all said and done, we get a few years down the line here, and he's like, he's about 8, 9 sacks average guy instead of the 12 to 14 that you're probably expecting. I'll take that. I mean, it's not top five worthy, but I'll take that. As a productive player. Um, I don't know your specific thoughts on Bane and so forth, but what is your thought on this list and who you think that they would be targeting? Do you think they're specifically looking at Raz, like, and that's all that matters to them, or could a guy like Ruben Bain kind of break that mold?
Yeah, first of all, let me just say, as far as being wrong in the draft at times, you and I can join a rather prolific list of beautiful names that are wrong on the draft sometimes, beginning with and not ending with names like Bill Walsh, Bill Belichick, Joe Gibbs, Bill Parcells, Bill Polian. I
Yeah.
mean, they're not right 95% of the time on the draft. They're right about 75, 80% of the time on the draft. And these are the best who have ever done it, right? So, yeah, we're all gonna take our shot. Listen, some of these great names have picked out guys in the draft that they just knew was going to be an awesome football player and barely get on the field, right? It just happens to everybody. So, we're not going to feel too bad about that. But specifically, let me start with Ruben Bain. I really like Ruben Bain. I feel like he plays with power and violence enough that I totally agree with you. Even if he never turns into a steady double digit sack kind of a guy, I still feel like there's a really good player working here. And I feel like as long as I provide him with somebody else who can stress the quarterback, like Owe, or maybe in future years, like a defensive tackle who can do it, as long as we have something working together, which is what a lot of teams are doing anyway, then I should be fine, But I do think there's an upside here that he can work past into double digit sacks. We'll see. Hitting the Raz here. Let's say your good group is available here. Let's just say it Bain, Downs, Tate, and I think you said Delane in that scenario. Delane and Love, right?
Hmm.
In that man, I'm still gonna stick with the video I've watched, okay? And that's still Bain first, and that's Downs right with him. I mean Downs actually has better video to be honest, but we're looking for an edger, honestly, so I get that part of it. Then after that it would come. Love's video was just as good, but again, running back, not our greatest need, right? Could be a need, but not our greatest. So in that scenario, I would still go Bain first and Caleb Downs second, and then Mansour Delane third is where I would go for the Commanders, not for every team, but for the Commanders. I really think they would hit defense. And then if you scope out with this whole list right here, I gotta feel like the Commanders looking at defense and they're looking at Raz. But if Bain is the guy that falls, I figure the Raz is still good enough that they would still take him because, so many times you have to ask what's driving the Raz. And by and large, it's those short arms that are tearing the Raz down. It's not that he's unathletic or unfast. It's just those short arms pull him down into different categories. So I gotta think they're still looking at defense and they're still looking at Raz. And I do feel like we're gonna have a guy or two on, that's gonna fit that for them.
So what do you think? What would be Adam Peters' dream scenario? Like, who do you think is on the top of his board? Like, if this dude falls to seven, like he's running the card, he's running that pick in. Like, who do you think is the dream scenario? And maybe it's not even a guy on this list. Maybe it's somebody else that we're not even considering. But who do
Right.
you think is the top players on their board right
Yeah,
now?
that's always possible. That's a great point. Sometimes it's not even the guy on the list, but if it were me sitting at seven, and I'll try to think for Peters a little bit, although I struggle to think for others. I know I do. David Bailey is probably the guy most likely to fall that fits a need that also fits the RAS. Okay. That seems to be checking all the boxes. Like you, I think Reese is gone and I think Mendoza is gone. I think those two guys are just gone. And I figure, and I don't know which offensive lineman, but I figure somebody before us takes one of the tackles. It could be Fano, it could be Mawanoa. There's even talk it could be Freeling, but I do figure somebody in front of us takes an offensive lineman. So that's three spots gone. And then I figure somebody takes one of the offensive weapons, whether it's Tate or Love. So I figure that's four spots gone. And we haven't touched Bain, we haven't touched Styles, we haven't touched Bailey, we haven't touched Delane, right? So that's four guys. And I figure two of them are going to be available, but I do figure if we're checking all the boxes, I figured David Bailey. I would say Stunny Styles, but I just don't figure Peters is going to want to grab a linebacker at seven. I figure, given a choice, he'd rather get somebody who's bringing heat off the edge, and Bailey certainly does that.
He's been comped to Fred Warner. That's one of his pro comps is Fred Warner. So
Right.
does that tempt like connecting back to the San Francisco days, would that tempt you at all? Like if you could get a Fred Warner at seven,
Me, yes, in a heartbeat, yes. If I thought I was getting that caliber of a player, because when it comes to being on the spectrum of positional premium position philosophy, man, I'm on the way other end. I don't want to say I don't care about premium position because I do. I would still value a left tackle over a guard, all things being equal. I would still value, yeah, an edge rusher over a running back, all things being equal. But man, other than that, I really don't care. If I know I've got a wonderful football player sitting there, I don't care what position he plays. I don't care if he plays safety or running back. Like if I need him, I'm gonna grab him. But no, I think you're right about that. It would
so
tempt me a lot.
where do you think where do you have love and where do you think they have love?
Yeah, I see, and that's where it gets team specific, right? I don't figure they have love too high because I don't figure they're too interested in grabbing a running back, to be honest about it. I just don't. It would surprise me, man. So I have love as a big board rating. I have him, I think, fourth or fifth on my big board. But I bet for the Commanders, I'll bet he's somewhere around 15th or so as far as their needs, their desires, what they would really go after is kind of what I'm guessing.
So I guess this is a nice transition into into our next conversation then. If all things, just say for some most of these players on this list here are available, okay? Love being one of them.
Yes.
Like, would you take Love over a Bailey, over a Styles, over Bain, over Downs? Like, where is it? Like, who are you taking over Love? Like, of the players that realistically would be there at seven, are you taking Love over any of those guys?
I'm being a total hypocrite here because honestly, I've had Love in my top five on the big board for months.
Yeah.
Yet when I've mock drafted consistently, both with myself and with others, he's fallen. And in my head, it's not because he plays running back. It's in my head, it's because all these teams in the top 10 have other bigger needs. I mean, goodness gracious, they have bigger needs, like all of them, And I'm not even trying to positional value this thing. So in my head, I'm sitting here on the Commanders. I'll take Bain over Love because I need an edge. I'll take Downs over Love because my defense sucks. I'll take Bailey over Love because I need an edge. I'll take Delane over Love because my defense sucks. I'll take Reese and Styles over Love because my defense sucks. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them right there. So really, you get back to the Commanders here. Man, I guess it would be an argument between Tate or Love as the what eighth best pick for the Commanders here out of this
Yeah.
list. And again, I'm being a hypocrite. I know I am because I got Love fourth or fifth, but I'm like, we got so many needs on defense, you
Yeah.
know?
I does it because I've toyed around with this. It's like I'm not trying to turn this into just a Jeremiah Love conversation, but the thought of Jaden Daniels and Jeremiah Love, that does sound very tempting,
Yes,
to have that combination.
agreed.
And I don't think that, at least with Cliff Kingsbury's offense, and I can't imagine even David Blau's offense is, I mean, yes, stylistically is going to be different, but that any running back can probably fit into this offense and have success. No, I'm not talking like Pro Bowl or all pro level, but I mean, we saw what, Bill did last season,
Right.
and he's a seventh round, maybe you
Yeah.
could you could argue he's a fourth round talent that just fell to the seventh round. Okay, fine, sure.
Hmm.
But on paper, if he's a fourth round running back, it's like, okay, we can find that value if we want to add somebody. We can find that value at 71 or at 147. Do we need to take Love there if we can make other running backs work? Or do you think his talent level is just that much higher that like, okay, if we put him with Jaden, like we're gonna take this offense to a completely different level. Like, and does that help you even more like overcompensate for the lack of everything we have on defense? And it also does fill a bit of a need because we lack, star power or just power in general on the offensive side of football.
Right.
I mean, it's hard because it's like, man, I wouldn't want to turn that down.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like, man, we have all these other needs. If I get a Mansour Delane, a lock, pair him with Trey Amos
Right.
and have a lockdown, secondary, or at least on the edges. I mean, that's hard to pass up. Pairing Bain and Bailey with Owe and Chase on, and then the rest of that, Armstrong and Baptiste, like that's hard to turn down. So like there's not a bad option here in my opinion.
Right.
It's just, man, like what do you want to what do you want to choose? Like I know that sounds so simple and almost stupidly simple at that point. It's like, oh, we'll just make a choice, but like there's so many different scenarios that could play out here. Like, I mean, to me, I'm out on Tate at 7.
Okay.
I don't think Tate should even be considered at 7. I think there's much better athletes that are available at 7, and I think that you can find a receiver, whether it's I'm not saying we need to go get Ayuk, but you could even find someone at 71 or 147 that um, is going to provide, at least in this offense, the way I'm seeing it, similar production to what Carnell Tate is going to be able to provide. Um, Now, long term, don't know. I'm thinking of the next year or two, you know. And I don't know how much like even if he is, by far and away the best receiver in this class, I don't know how much that helps us like right now this year, if that makes sense. Jeremiah Love completely transforms our offense. I don't know that Tate does. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a great point. I will say this, the Jeremiah Love thing. Yeah, I am tempted. I wouldn't do it if I had my choice of say two other defensive players on this list. But it would not hurt my feelings at all if the Commanders do it on draft night, especially if they find a way to get another productive receiver on this offense. Because, what you run into, this is the realities, man. You and I have been doing this for so long now. We've run into the realities of this. We want to fix everything, but we can't. There is no way we come out of this off season with a defense that's got everything figured out personnel wise, plus an offense that's got everything figured out personnel wise. It's just not going to happen. So now you have to decide, especially if you're the coaching staff, right? Because you're the ones on the hot seat. I'm not sure the GM is as much on the hot seat, but the coaching staff is. So how loud do you scream for what you think is going to save your job the most? And if you think it's offense, then do you? I would feel a lot better about grabbing Love at 7 if we also grab somehow another productive receiver to go along with McLaurin. Because if it's just Love and McLaurin, that's still may not be enough to get it done. But if you can introduce a third weapon there, I feel way better about it. If, on the other hand, you're like, man, nope, still too many holes in the defense. We got to run this defense thing down. Then I would flip the whole draft over and I'd be like, hey, let's get a really talented guy at 7 on defense. And then wherever we end up, 71 or whatever, let's throw another body in there on defense to try to fill these holes so we don't, we're not that bad anymore. But man, you're getting a real jam here. You're getting a real jam. It's like, mm, I want to do several different things, and I just don't have the resources to get it done. So, you know, that's the rock in the hard place.
Yeah, it it is difficult because I pulled up ESPN's big board. I wanted to get somebody else's, but technology wasn't able to get it done. I'm looking at like the top 15 players ish, and I'm seeing all types of possibilities.
Yeah,
You know, um,
yeah,
whether it's sticking and picking at 7, whether that's trading down, to, maybe a 13, 14, even 15. And I still see solutions out there because, there's probably gonna be some that are lower on this list that might go ahead. I don't know that all the top 15, the exact 15 that are on this board are all going to go within the top 15 picks. I don't know about that. Um, so there's a lot of different potential scenarios here, if you trade out at 7. Now, if you stick and pick at 7, again, I'm looking for hopefully a group of Bailey, Love, and Delane. That would be my ideal scenario. It's like, okay, I think those are the three top, based on, the way the board is, those are probably the three top needs, trade out. Maybe Bailey for Styles. If it's Styles, Love, Delane, that's a really tough, that's a really tough decision there. It's going to be a tough decision regardless, because there's only so many there's only 6 players that are going to go before us, and
right.
in what order they're going to go in, I don't know. But if I had my pick right now, if I had all the people that I wanted at 7, that's tough. I would probably choose David Bailey. He'd probably be my number one pick
Okay,
for 7. And then probably Delane, honestly. And the reason I say Delane is because, man, I want my secondary solidified.
right.
And having Delane, Amos, Sanders and Amik Robertson, to me, that goes from, okay, we have a manageable cornerback group right now to know, okay, now this is potentially a strength now with Delane, Amos,
Yeah,
Robertson, Sanders.
right.
That to me, that's a good group. That's a nice, young, solid group that you can build on, in the future. And if one of them, whether it's Amos or Samerstill, doesn't work out, well, then you can. It's a lot easier to to replace one of those guys instead of saying, well, now one of our big starters is no longer going to work. Like it provides depth. It also provides a future plan for this secondary. You could say the same thing about Caleb Downs. Him and Nick Cross can be on the field at the same time, and that's going to help our secondary. So. Um, I would probably lean Delane because that's just very tempting to solidify that group that has struggled so mightily over the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, listen, if they grab Delane at 7, I'm totally fine with that too. Let's say if our preferred defensive players have all kind of gone. Let's say if Bailey and Bain are both gone, maybe Reese and Styles, and so now we are starting to look more at like you said, Caleb Downs and Mansour Delane. There's nothing wrong with the Delane pick. I mean, he looks really good to me. I don't quite throw him in the shutdown category, but just a really well balanced, high end, high athlete guy who seems to be able to do all the coverages. He can do press, he can do off, he can do zone. I mean, I didn't see anything he couldn't do. Um, he looked like he could work interceptions and break up passes. I mean, I think he there's nothing he can't do. So, that's a fantastic pick. And like you said, you pair him with Amos and Sainristil and Robertson. That's a really good group. And if you wanted to, I know most people don't like doing this, and maybe you don't. There are safeties available later in this draft at areas we would be picking that we could start to add in on the backside of that depth too. because there's not as many edge rushers back there where we're picking, right? So, you're struggling to catch that, but you're like, hey, well, if we invert this thing a little bit, if we have just a tremendous athletic secondary that's young and developing, you know, and maybe we're not terrible on the defensive line, we can do something, maybe we can put together a good defense here, something that can compete.
So what are you looking at? Ideally top if we stick and pick at seven, where are you looking uh your top guys?
I I feel like Bain and Bailey would be my top two for our needs and for what's sitting there. If either guy drops, I think I'm just going to go ahead and grab them and call it a day. I really do feel like that. If they're both gone, and they could be, if they're both gone and Sonny Styles is gone, um, and Reese is gone, then I guess I've got my choice between Downs or Mansour Delane. Um, if Sonny Styles is still sitting there, I would be very tempted between him and Downs and Delane. But still, I'd be very tempted right there. So that might be my confusing part right there.
All right, just say we trade down to I don't know probably between 11 and 14. I know
Okay,
that's a bit of a range, but I can't imagine we trade much further down than that.
right, probably not.
So, assuming those, you can just call it probably the top nine guys, more likely than not, are probably going to be off the board there. So, who would you be looking for at that point?
Yeah, that's a because that's I think that's realistic. I think that could very well happen on draft night. We'll see. What do you think we can get if we move down to 11 or 14? Maybe we get another pick in the 50s. Maybe I think we felt like that was
I think that's pretty
fairly
fair.
okay. So we'll keep that in the back of our mind. Sitting there, I tell you, sitting there 11 to 14, Jordan Tyson. He's there on the big board. I feel like Tyson's probably going to be sitting there 11 to 14. So if you want to add a receiver, I think he's sitting right there. And if you don't like Tyson because of the injury concerns, injury history, right? Then you can also go with where is he at? The kid from Makai Lemon, right? But
Hmm.
they're both sitting there. Um, Jerome McCoy should be sitting there. So if you want an in-your-face, highly, highly confident press man cover corner, that's your guy. I mean, I don't think he's well balanced. I don't think he looks good in off man. I don't think he looks good in zone. But goodness gracious, he believes he can cover anybody, and he usually can. So, that would be your guy right there. So I think McCoy or Tyson, without getting too farther deep into it, 11 to 14, probably McCoy or Tyson is what I would be looking at.
Does Mesidor or either of those two safeties tempt you?
All right, so let me start with Mesidor. The tape on Mesidor is fantastic. What does concern me with Mesidor, he's been playing the game for so long. I think this is his fifth or sixth college year. I forget what it is, and he played most of those years. And while he showed some things each year, this past year with Miami was just a huge burst for him. So I always wonder that he just finally put it all together in the weight room where he's now a grown man, obviously, fully developed, and he's been studying this tape for so long that he just master classed, you know, guys that were say 20 years old, right? That's a major concern for me with Mesidor. The two safeties, yes. Now, if I was going to gamble and start playing draft game, right? Which I don't know how smart that is. It makes great sense from a computer standpoint. If I was going to start gambling here, I would trade back again off of 11 to 14 range
Hmm.
and get to about 20. And I think if I did that, I could probably pick up another pick in the 50s or 60s, right?
Yeah.
If I do that, one of those safeties should still be sitting there at 20. I don't know if probably McNeil Warren, but either guy I'm happy with. They're very different players to me. I would be happy with either guy, Thieneman or McNeil Warren, and we could get another pretty good draft pick for that too.
Yeah, so if you trade back, let's just say you trade back to 14, and those, I would say the top nine guys, if they're gone, if Tate and McCoy are both all gone, and
Okay.
you're sitting at 14 with what would be left, I'm with you. I'd trade back again. Because I don't see anyone if you can, because then you're facing the same scenario with everybody else. It's like, well, who's there that's worth trading up for? So if you can trade back to like 2022, something like that, and pick up some extra picks, sure. I mean, I'd be fine with a Denzel Boston. We've talked about him before. I'd be fine with one of those safeties. We've talked about Concepcion before. I know that'd be a little high probably at around 2022. Cassius Howell, I know we've talked about him before. I would be fine with him at that point. Keldrick Falk, if he's there, maybe. I just don't know if he's dynamic enough of an athlete. And I know he's listed as an edge here. I thought he was more of an interior defensive guy. Um, but I mean, there's definitely options there. Yeah, ideally for me, it would probably be one of those safeties would still be there, hopefully, if you were to trade back again. But I would target one of those receivers more likely than not.
Yeah. So if we stick and pick at 7, we're expecting slash hoping, and I think it will be the case, one or two of those defensive players we like that checks most of our boxes is sitting.
Yeah.
If for some reason we could trade back, and I don't view trading back as this uber wise, intelligent move that only the savants make, because every time somebody trades back, that means somebody else traded up. Okay.
Hmm.
But if you could pull off a trade back, the farther back you trade, the more options you have. You are fishing in shallower talent pools for sure. You're giving up all the top edge rushers when you trade back. You're giving up the top wide receivers. You're giving up the top defensive backs. They're all the blue chippers. They're all gone at that point. But the farther back you trade, you can still get some good players, and you get more options to play with. And I don't mean fifth round picks. Like they're second round picks we're talking about here. So maybe mid to late seconds. So I do like it. If for this team for this year, I do like that game. If it works out, if it doesn't work out, I understand.
Yeah. Okay. So in this scenario here, okay, we take somebody, whoever it is. We take somebody. Okay. We talked about the different ranges and so forth. So let's just say in this scenario we traded back, and we get pick, I don't know, let's just say we get pick 50. I don't know. It seems like it wouldn't be at the top of the second round, but it's gonna be probably somewhere in between,
I think so. Yeah.
somewhere in the middle of the second round. So let's just say we have pick 50. Okay, I don't know who has that, just throwing out a scenario here. Um, who would you be looking for in that area in the second round? I
Yeah.
can
50's.
I can tell you Jacob Rodriguez. We've talked about him before in the mock drafts and stuff. That dude is an athletic freak. If I'm thinking of the right guy here,
Yeah.
at linebacker, and we definitely need to add to that room. Although I know the coaching staff loves McGee, and pairing Chenal with him is probably very tempting. But at the same time, you can add further depth to that. And currently, Chenal has never called a defense and never, got guys lined up. Got to
Right.
get somebody in there that can do that. I'm sorry. Like, and if I'm one of these, I guess, more traditional players that your middle linebacker, your starting middle linebacker should probably be the one calling the defense, but that's just me. Um, who else would be there? Jadarian Price. I mean, heck, I don't love him as much as Love, obviously, but
Right.
I'd be really interested in him. Galladay, we've talked about him before, linebacker at Cincinnati. TJ Parker, edge from Clemson, depending on what we did with that first pick. There's a handful of guys here that I'd definitely be interested in.
Yeah, I agree. And it gets real fuzzy at 50, right? Knowing who's going to be there. But let's assume we've traded back, whether it's to the 11-14 range or the 20 range. More than likely, that means we've addressed defensive back based on who might likely be there. So we've probably either grabbed a CB 2 or 3, or we've grabbed a safety. Is probably what we've done at those spots. Just guessing. So let's say we've addressed the defensive backfield somehow, just for tonight's sake, and you're sitting there at 50. A lot of people do love Jacob Rodriguez. Man, you talk about leadership out the wazoo, should be able to green dot, if not from day one, fairly soon, sometime,
Yeah.
seems like a fantastic green dot. So I don't have any problem with that. Um, I do figure there should be a cluster of wide receivers and CBs sitting there that are good options for the Commanders if they want to double dip on the defensive backfield. But that's a good spot probably to get still a good solid wide receiver because that pool of wide receivers, though it's good and deep, it does run out about the, I don't know, middle of the third round is my projections. So sitting 50, I think I would lean wide receiver. And again, you don't know exactly who's sitting there, but if Chris Brazzell were sitting there, I'd snap him up at 50 out of Tennessee. He's 42 on this list. If they're a little lower on Ted Hurst out of Georgia State, but I wouldn't. Maybe we can catch him back at our next pick. The kid from North Dakota State, Bryce Lance. They're a little lower on him than I am, but I would catch him back there somewhere too. So somewhere between 50 and that next pick, I'd start looking heavy at wide receiver. It is tough to know that who's going to be sitting there. I do think by 50, I've seen a lot of mocks that have edge rushers sitting at 50. Some of the guys that can stress a quarterback. I'm just not buying it. I don't see any way that an R. Mason Thomas or a Cassius Howell or some of these other guys, TJ Parker, I don't see any chance those guys are sitting at 50. So I would rule that out for those of you in the audience that are seeing the names here. I just don't see any chance that the good edges are sitting there at 50.
Okay, so the next pick that we for sure do have is 71. Okay. So, we've in this scenario uh we've addressed defensive back, we've probably addressed either linebacker or receiver at this point. So where are we turning to next? Because honestly, again, depends on how things go. I might be looking at running back. I might be looking at center. It looks like there's a handful of offensive linemen and centers that might be in this range here. Um, because good Lord, do we need one? If we hadn't addressed receiver with that second round pick, that might be an area here. Who would you be looking at in that 71 area?
See, I think you're dead on it. And let's assume again we addressed defensive back with our first pick, and let's say Jacob Rodriguez or a linebacker, let's say one of the good linebackers falls, C.J. Allen with our second pick. Okay, so that's defensive back linebacker at the 71 spot. I think you're dead on it, man. I think we can be looking running back and center. I do feel like by the time you get to Man, I feel like by the time you get to pick 130, the good running backs worth having are largely gone in this draft. I think it runs out at that point. And I feel like the centers that are worth having, not worth having, but the centers that would be coveted are largely gone by that point. So 71 is the place to kind of get your first shot at that cluster. Whether, and just looking down through here, man, Mike Washington from Arkansas wouldn't be a bad pick. I feel like the Washington kid. I don't see where he's at on this list, but the Washington running back,
Yeah, he's
uh,
69 on this list.
Johnny Coleman. Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah. That's very much worth looking at for sure.
Yeah.
And then the centers that we talked about several times, Hecht or Connor Lew, who I personally love and would choose. Those kinds of guys. Center or running back really was. I think this is a great spot to kind of grab our choice of them. To be honest.
So would it concern you at this point uh that we have not addressed edge at this point?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
But my thought is I've studied it. I've been studying this since last summer. And I know the mocks are saying, I almost feel like I'm doing polling here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I know the mocks are saying that guys like R. Mason Thomas and Cassius Howell and TJ Parker could slip to 50. And I just don't believe it. Having watched the tape on every one of those guys, and knowing what I know about NFL teams, I don't think even Malachi Lawrence, I'm I'm doubting that the coveted guys who can really stress a quarterback from the edge spot, maybe they can't, maybe they're not three down players, but they can stress a quarterback from the third from from the edge. I think they're all going to be gone by 50. So we if we're gonna get one, I think we got to get one with that first pick. I just don't think they're going to be there later as far as anybody that's really going to produce, stress on the quarterback.
You have not mentioned, and I'll call him what he is. He's your draft crush, Dominic Orange. You have not mentioned him at all in this process.
No, I haven't. And I think what keeps coming back to me on that is we have so many other greater needs. It
Okay. Yeah.
is edge, linebacker, defensive back, both safety and CB. That's what it keeps coming back to. But nothing wrong with the Dominic Orange pick. I think I kind of sort of there's also several defensive tackles that can stop the run in this draft. So even going back to the third round, if Dante Corleone is sitting there out of Cincinnati, it's not a bad pick, right? So that is pulling Dominic Orange's value down because there are several defensive tackles in this draft. Even a Rayshawn Benny, who's sitting, I don't know if he's here on this page or not, but sitting back there at pick 130 or 150, out
hmm
of Michigan. That's pulling down Dominic Orange's need to have a guy like that.
Any of the edge rushers, whether it be Kayron Crawford here, Jay Barham, uh, DDS, specifically DDS, because we talked about him a fair bit in our previous mock drafts. Would 71 be too high for guys like that? Because they're kind of further down on the board here.
Everybody I'm watching says yes, too high for those guys. Now, when I watched the 24 tape on Denia Dennis Sutton, DDS, I thought it was tremendous. And everybody else did too, because they had him in the first round in all the summer mocks. His 25 tape, which needs a lot of explaining, but I kind of hate to draft a guy who needs a lot of explaining, right?
Right.
So I'm not going to pound the table for him, but I think he's worth considering when you look at his 24 tape and when you look at his RAS scores and when you look at his 25 bowl game performance versus Clemson. I think he's certainly worth considering. And he would, I don't know that he's ever a double digit sack guy, but you talk about a guy that should produce from edge. That's a guy worth considering. Kyron Crawford, probably still too high for him, but he does have some potential there at edge. I do like that. Even a Romello Heights, who has slipped down boards. A Joshua Josephs from Tennessee, if they're sitting there, worth considering. But dang it, I tell you, I hate to go at 71 here. I hate to go and get the 10th best edge in the draft when I could grab the best center in the draft or the third best running back in the draft, fourth best running back in the draft, right? So
Right. Yeah.
I kind of feel like I'm getting shortchanged, is what I feel like.
All right. You mentioned him earlier, Bryce Lance, Dakota State wide receiver. Would you take him here at 71?
I would certainly consider if we hadn't picked up a wide receiver by now. This this is realistically, this is probably where the Ted Hurst and the Bryce Lance guys are going to get really strong consideration. I really do believe it. Both small school guys, but they're not small players. Hurst is 6'2", Bryce Lance is 6'3", 6'4", somewhere around there. Their athletic scores were good. I believe Bryce Lance really blew up in terms of athletic score. Ted Hurst was good athletic score. But you watch their tape, man, and I've watched all their not all their tape. I've watched a lot of tape on both guys. It's a lot of fun to watch. You do get into the dilemma of small school guys. How well does it translate versus, but when I watched, there was more tape of Ted Hurst against top teams because I got to watch him against Kentucky and against, I think, Ole Miss and against another big time school. Man, he looks good, but you also realize they were able to limit him because he's the only guy on the team that's really, scary to like Ole Miss, so they're able to just kind of double team him. But I like Hurst and Bryce Lance both right here.
So yeah, I just looked it up. They both have over 9.9 RAS scores. So
Okay, yeah,
not a problem there.
yeah,
So if you had your pick, whoever you want is going to be there at 71, who would you be taking?
yeah. Honestly, it would be Ted Hurst if we haven't drafted a wide receiver. If we're sitting there looking at running back, it would probably be Jonah Coleman. or Emmett Johnson. I don't think Emmett Johnson's going to be there, but if he is, it would be Emmett Johnson or Jonah Coleman. And if it's center, it would be Connor Liu or Sam Hecht. Those would be the guys right there. So center, Liu or Hecht, running back Coleman or Johnson, and wide receiver Ted Hurst.
Okay. All right. Let's get on to the next 100 players. So this is going to pretty much take us to the beginning of the end of the sixth round, beginning of the seventh round. I don't know how exactly what the math is with that, with the comp picks and so forth. But
Right.
um, so the next pick we don't have until, hold on, just 1 second. We don't have until 147. Now, ideally, if we trade down, we're probably going to comp another third round pick or probably a fourth round pick, especially in that second trade down scenario that we had talked about. Um, so just for argument's sake, let's say we picked up a second and a fourth when we traded out of seven, initially. So that seems maybe a little high, but let's just say for argument's sake that we have somewhere in the between, what did I say? Uh, Probably somewhere in the 100 to 120 range. So maybe pick 110. Just say we have pick 110.
Okay.
Um, I know I'm just exact math here, really. But who would you be looking for at that range there, or fourth round grade, basically?
And and this honestly, this is where you start to get into a lot of arguments about who's even going to be there, right? Because
Right,
if
of course.
if we all can't really be sure who's sitting there at seven, we have no clue who's going to be sitting there at 110.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
full disclaimer on that. Let me try to trot out some names I haven't here at 110. Just kind of glancing through Michael Trigg, tight end from Baylor. Big, strong, athletic, and productive. There are some red flag type issues. I kind of sort of felt like he had matured out of a lot of that, but just know, if we wanted to upgrade at tight end, he's sitting there. If we're needing corners, I still think Will Lee is worth talking about right there out of Texas A&M. I just don't know that he's ever going to be your number one CB ever. So the question is, can he fill in as your number two CB for a few seasons? I think there's a chance of that. Man, if you're looking for defensive tackles to rotate in, I think Darrell Jackson out of Florida State there at 113 is certainly a guy worth talking about. Um, Glancing through the list, if you still need a cornerback and you're willing to take a big CB, Dekario Davis at 120 is a guy we've talked about several times in different places. Um, Looking through here, oh yeah, I mentioned this earlier, the safety group here. So this is a great chance if we haven't addressed safety to address it. So let me just glance down through here, make sure I don't miss anybody. 127 on the list, Genesis Smith out of Arizona. Lousy tackler. So probably not going to draft him. I get it. Not a good tackler, but rangy. I mean, goodness gracious, can he cover all over the place? It is fantastic to watch his range. It is tremendous. If you don't like that, I'm glancing down through the safeties here again, trying to find them. I don't see the next safeties. Michael Taft there for Texas. He's at 177, so this is probably early for him. 110. I wouldn't grab him there. Okay, that's all I see for the safety category. But I will say probably a safety sitting there at 127. Genesis Smith could be a guy.
If Connor Liu were still sitting there, I'm assuming you'd probably snatch him right up.
I personally would, and I know why people have him low. There's no argument about him. Some guys we just argue about, right? He's
Right.
not that athletic, but I just love his straight ahead, forward, truly dominate point of attack. You can run to either side of him. He'll create the hole. I just love that so much, and he'll hold up in passing, in pass blocking. He'll be just fine. I thought that was tremendous. But some teams just want more athletic guys at center or anywhere on their offensive line.
Right. I mean, obviously, a center has not been addressed yet, and you trade back and accumulate even another pick. I think that it has to be either that extra pick needs to be used on an offensive weapon or a center. Um,
Right.
you got to grab one of those things.
Right.
And your other picks you can use, obviously on edge, on secondary, or what have you. You have plenty of options. But if you're going to trade down and you're going to get an extra third or fourth round pick, that seems the time to grab a center. It really, truly, based on what you're telling me, there's nothing that's super
Yeah.
top end like first or second round. At least that's worth looking at to make that selection. So if you can get an extra third or fourth round pick, you got to grab a center or a receiver here. To me, that's what it seems like based on our conversations, not just tonight, but even the past mock drafts that we've done.
Yeah, I agree. I do feel like the centers I'm interested in will be gone by third round, but well, by middle of the third round. I figure late third though, you can still get centers. Parker Brailsford from Alabama was inconsistent, but boy, the talent was there. People back in the summer loved this guy. Matt Golban from Michigan State is is a little limited, but boy, you talk about a guy that'll anchor super well and pass block very well and just hold up. His run blocking's okay. He's not going to run all over the place for you, but he can move a little, But I mean, man, you can grab a guy right there at center in Matt Golban who will, I think, be a decent NFL center over the years. Nothing extra, but decent. You know.
Okay, then we don't have another pick until 147, so that'd be fifth round. Um, Kind of talking about the same group of people at this point.
Right. It is. Yeah.
Um, so who are a couple, I guess at this point, what we'd have left is at currently 147, 187, 209, 223. So we have a couple of later round picks. I'm not going to ask us to make a quote unquote selection on each one necessarily, but what are a couple of guys that are late round guys that you're just like, yes, absolutely. If he's there, you got to take him, whether you need the position or you don't need the position. You're just like, I'm
Yeah.
in love with this late round prospect.
Well, let me just sit there at 147 for a second and grab some different names. A name I haven't mentioned yet at running back is Damon Claiborne out of Wake Forest. I figure this is the last chance right here to get a running back. The rest of them, it's not that they cannot play, it's just the percentages I think really fall off the table. Damon Claiborne out of Wake Forest sitting there at 130, 136.
Six. Yep.
Um, he's the tape on him was fun. Watching him burst through holes and score touchdowns is fun. So, and their Wake Forest isn't super talented. They're very, very mediocre in terms of talent levels, but he burst, on the tape. So that's good. Rashawn Benny, I already mentioned him, 135 out of Michigan. Good
Hey,
size, not
there
huge, but
there's the Wake Forest connection there. David Blau played, I believe, played for Wake Forest, if I'm
is
not
that
mistaken.
right? Okay,
I
I
think
forgot
he
about
I,
that.
I gotta look that up real quick, but I'm pretty sure he
Yeah.
played for Wake Forest.
Okay. So
Anyways, continue. Sorry about
Rayshon
that.
Benny, if you need a defensive tackle, and I think we should start drafting some defensive tackles at some point out of Michigan. It's a great pick right there.
Yes.
Another name I saw here is Brendan Thompson out of Mississippi State. Small guy, wide receiver at 145, but boy is he fast. I think he had the fastest combine time, but everybody pretty much already expected him to get the fastest combine time because they already knew watching the film, watching the games, just how blazing fast he was. So, you're not going to get a big, high production receiver, but man, if you want somebody who can really change the game in terms of speed, he can certainly do it. And excuse me, there are some linebackers that'll probably be sitting here at some point. So Caleb Elam's Orr out of TCU's athletic guy. And I was checking here for another linebacker here. Bryce Becker out of Oregon, 152, is another guy, probably more of a aggressive, physical green dot kind of a guy. Aiden Fisher, I don't know if he'll be this low or not, but Aiden Fisher of Indiana, probably another physical, aggressive green dot kind of a guy. Tarian York out of Texas A&M, who I figure is going to be gone by this point, is another green dot kind of a guy. There's some green dot linebackers sitting right around, 120 to 150, I think you should be able to get one of those guys.
I need to correct myself before I get flamed in the comments. David Blau went to Purdue, so my apologies on that one. But anyways, um, are there any quarterbacks? Again, we don't have a backup. I don't think I brought this up, months ago, probably at this point, like, hey, can't ignore backup quarterback, even though we have Mariota. At this point, given the holes that we still have even after free agency, I'd probably want to kick that down the road. But if for whatever reason we were to decide to go that route, would there be any late round quarterbacks that you'd be looking at as potential projects
Yeah, absolutely.
that would fit a Ben Johnson-ish type scheme that I mean, I don't know for the record here, I don't know what kind of offense David Blau wants to run with a running court with a mobile quarterback like Jaden Daniels. You know, if you're
Right.
going based off a Ben Johnson scheme, that doesn't really necessarily fit the mold of a mobile quarterback offense.
Right.
So I don't know how that would work. I don't, I'm trying to envision that. I imagine it's going to be pretty freaking awesome. But I might be a little biased in that regard, but who would be a project quarterback that, you know, you could see turning into a backup, a solid backup, you know, in a couple of years, here in the late rounds?
I think that's a great question because I think there are some great project quarterbacks sitting in this draft. I mean, great guys that we thought back in the summer or 2 years ago might be first round picks or number one overall picks. That type of guys are sitting there. But let me start with one guy here, the Arkansas kid, Green, Taylor Green. I think he's
Yep.
at 115 on the board here.
Yes.
Big, athletic. You know, processing and accuracy a little questionable, but boy, big and athletic. I mean, just fantastic. You move down to Carson Beck, huge, strong arm, very strong arm. Again, processing and interceptions and decision making have been a problem, but the production is there. The big arm is there. You move down to let's see, Drew Aller sitting here somewhere. Where's he at?
Yeah, he's at 131, I think.
131's where Drew Aller's at. Yeah, again, big arm. Uh, the production did there was some production there and it got gradually better, but the light obviously never came on for him. But man, you talk about a number one pick 3 years ago that people were projecting, coming through. He's sitting right there. Great project to have sitting on the bench. And let's see anybody else in this range right
Uh,
here.
Cole Payton and unless I missed somebody else, uh, Luke Altmaier.
Where is Cole Payton sitting at?
Cole Payton's at 155.
155. I tell you, there is no truer representation of project than Cole Payton out of North Dakota State. You talk about a guy. Uh, I don't mean to brand him this way, but people are talking about using him in the Taysom Hill mold until he grows into a quarterback. So, you talk about a quarterback that could produce some possibilities if an OC wants to use him that way, then that would be another excellent option too.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So if we don't trade back, what are you hoping position wise? Are you hoping for any positions that absolutely need addressing in this draft?
Yeah, I guess you're just talking about all the way back to the first to our
Yeah,
seventh overall
just
pick.
when the final pick is made and the draft over and draft grades are immediately going to be flying out the window because everybody knows exactly how the draft is going to go on, you know, at the end of April, and how everything's going to turn out. When draft grades are flying, you know, obviously we're hoping for, you know, an A plus. Obviously that'd be great, but doesn't matter, you know,
Right.
'cause until they start playing. But who are you hoping, or I not who, like what positions do you think are absolutely paramount that we need to address in this draft?
Well, and your opinion is going to be even more valuable than mine here, but I'll trot mine out first and then get it back to you. I To me, the two positions that scream at me are edge rusher and center, as far as what I think we can get and what should be sitting there and what our needs are. Man, there are centers in this draft. We could catch them starting at pick 50 or 60, all the way down through probably 130. I'm going to be of all things, I'm probably going to be a little ticked off if we don't come out of this draft with a center after letting Biotish go. That's probably going to piss me off a little bit, just to be honest about it. Okay. And I know we can always sign somebody, but that's going to tick me off a little bit. And so I would say that one. but edge rusher would be the big one. As far as I don't want Owe being the guy out there by himself trying to generate tons of pressure. He can do some of that, but he's just not a guy I think of can work on his own and generate all the pressure. So whether it's seventh pick or not, whether we figure out a way to get back into late first, early second round, and grab a guy. I want another guy that can really just get stress on the quarterback, even if he's not a three down player. I really want a guy like that. So um, I figure the top, I haven't counted exactly. I figure by pick 45, the top five or six edges are all gone. Maybe the top, no, it's even higher than that. I figure the top seven or eight edges are all gone by pick 45. So by the time you get to pick 50 and 60, man, you're into edge rusher number 9 and 10 at that point. And it's not that what starts to happen at 9 and 10 edge rusher, you have less stress quarterback guys and you have more athletic guys who are good run stoppers and a good rotation guys and good length guys is what you're starting to get. But they're not really guys who have figured out speed wise, bend wise, and move wise, how to actually get to a quarterback. You're just not going to get that back there at 50 and 60. So, I really feel like edge has got to be a major chase there at our top pick, and then a center somewhere, in the middle of the draft.
Yeah, so for me, obviously, you want to fix everything, right? But I'm
Yeah.
with you on the center. Um, Allegretti starting at center for me, that is probably one of the worst. If they say that that's plan A,
Yeah.
man, I got some questions.
I do
You know,
too.
um, now to me, there are just on paper, there are more pressing needs than that. Allegretti, we don't like him at center, right?
Right.
But I don't like Sanders Still or Robertson being my other starting corner. I don't like
Nope.
that at all.
Nope.
Getting Delane, McCoy, somebody out there, right? So if my starting secondary is Trey Amos, a combination of Mike Sainristil and Amik Robertson, and then at safety we have Nick Cross and uh, uh, crap, I can't. His last name is Martin. I don't forget what the heck his first name is. My mind's
Quan
totally blank.
Martin.
Yeah, Quan Martin.
Yeah.
If that's our starting secondary, I'm crapping my pants because like that's nothing to work with
No,
really.
it's not.
Um, and it's no disrespect to Amos and Sanders still, or even Cross. He hasn't even played it down for us yet. He's a fine safety, right? But he's not some superstar guy in the backfield. In the secondary if you could pair a Downs or a Thieneman or one of those other safeties that we talked about at the end of the first round, even in the second round,
Yeah.
even a third round, you talked about a group of safeties. If you could pair one of them with him, I'd feel a lot better about. So to me, addressing I understand we got to get edge. Owe, Chason, Armstrong, like again, not a great group of guys, but at least it's better than they were last year.
Yeah, it is that.
Secondary, the there is it's better than it was last year. It's not to me on paper it's better, but to me overall it's not that much better.
Right.
Um, but when to me the secondary is worse off at this point in time. The
Yeah.
secondary is worse off. I would prefer. I don't want to pass up on Bailey and Bain necessarily, but man, if I can improve that secondary, if I can get a corner and a safety.
Right.
I'm gonna want to do that. And along with center again, I want to make that a somewhat priority. I don't want to make it top priority. I don't want to take a center if we get a second round pick. I'm not unless he's the best center that you think that is going to come through in the next year or two. Fine, sure, but to me, secondary, we have to improve that. I am not a Quan Martin guy. I want that
No.
experiment to be over and done with. He's a very athletic guy. I understand why they might like him. It's been a couple of seasons now. This is I think it might be the last year of his rookie contract, and I don't and see it. Even if he has an okay year, okay to even good year, well, I'll give him benefit of the doubt. Let's just say he plays Good. Are they going to give him a massive contract extension? Probably not.
Right.
Unless this guy has 8 interceptions and makes a Pro Bowl, right? They're not going to give him an extension. So I need this secondary addressed
Yeah.
at least once, if not twice, in this draft.
See, and I think that's a great point. And I tell you where I kept, this has been weeks of us doing this now,
Yeah.
months literally. I've kept coming back to the idea of being able to trade back maybe twice. I've kept coming back to that. And I know that's not popular. I know that's not the traditional way. And I've even told teams not to get too sophisticated about trying to trade back over the years because you're getting into shallower talent pools. But if you're willing, whether it's you, Robertson, or the franchise commanders, or me, if we're willing to back off of edge as our top need, that really does free up the ability to trade back. And let's say that we trade back to the 11-14 range and we pick up a 50, and we trade back to the 20 range and we pick up a 70, right?
Hmm.
At 20, we can grab, if we want, a safety that everybody loves, whether it's Thieneman or McNeil Warren. Everybody's going to love that safety. If we don't do that, we can grab a corner that may be a little bit of a reach, but is still pretty good. Or we can grab an edge that might be a little bit of a reach, but can get on the quarterback, right? You sit there at 50, and now you should be able to grab a corner you like if you want to, decent corner. You certainly should be able to grab, it's probably a little early for the safeties. Um, so I don't know exactly what we would do at 50. Maybe we'll grab probably
Receiver.
the wide receiver at 50.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Yeah. So secondary at 20, wide receiver at 50. You get to, let's say we got two picks in the 70s range now, right?
Hmm.
Um, at that point, man, you can certainly grab a center that I want. You can grab another secondary guy
Or a
uh,
linebacker.
or linebacker at that spot. So now, man, we've banged out four positions here, right?
Yeah.
So there really is a lot of appeal in drafting back this year, you know, if we're willing to give up on edge. So,
Yeah. It's hard though because we're gonna have that cluster of 2 to 3 players at 7
right.
that we all would really love to have.
Yeah.
And punting on that could, you talked earlier in this show about the coaching staff being on edge, like
Right.
on the hot seat potentially, and like they might
Right.
be standing up on the table saying we need to take this guy. If Peters makes a move like that, where he trades back not once but twice, and we look back, 2 or 3 seasons from now, and all those players that went before are Pro Bowl, all pro level players, and
Yep.
the guys that we ended up with, granted, they filled needs right now, but they're not even close to the players that we could have gotten, and we
Right.
we punted away that opportunity. Man, he's not going to have a job for forget about with us. He's not going to have a job in the NFL for very long if he makes repeatedly those kinds of mistakes.
Totally
And
agree.
his first 2 draft classes, the jury's still out on those two.
Right.
So
Jury's still out.
we could be looking back and be like, man, he did not have a lot of draft success.
The
So, I mean, it'd be the same thing if you pick somebody at 7, and picks the wrong guy. But I mean,
right.
I don't know. Yeah, to me, that's different than completely like foregoing that opportunity.
It
But I
is.
mean, it's difficult.
Statistically speaking, and this bears out over the course of many drafts, many years. You get outside of that top 7 to 8 guys, and your likelihood of all pro goes way down. You get
Yeah.
outside of the top 20 to 25 guys in the average draft, your likelihood of Pro Bowl goes dramatically down. You get outside of the top 2 rounds, your likelihood of a starter, period, worth having falls off a cliff. I mean, it just falls off. And yes, there's lots of obvious misses every year, but statistically, those numbers hold up. And you're exactly right. what looks like more toys to play with at picks 50 and 70, which I've been talking about, may actually be guys that are barely good enough to start versus one guy at pick 7 who turns into, let's say, a Pro Bowler for 8 years, right? And man, that's tough.
And for the people in the comments, which let us know your comments, but that are saying like, well, if there's more bullets in the chamber is better than like shooting one and missing, right? That fair enough, right? Let's look just 2 years ago. We had three second round picks,
Yeah,
three of them. Mikey Sanders still, a, I would say a solid corner at this point in his career, not a great corner. I don't
right.
know how many teams at this current point in time he starts for. Maybe a handful, not a lot, if I had to guess. Okay. At this point in time,
Yep.
Johnny Newton, he ain't starting for anybody. Certainly not
No,
even us.
nope.
Ben Sinnott, he's probably a fullback at this point. He's not even a tight
Probably
end.
so.
So we drafted a second round fullback. Okay.
Yeah.
Especially the way he's probably rumored and probably going to be used in this offense as a fullback. Okay. So three second round picks that Adam Peters has made. One of them might be a starter. So I would, again, Ben just said he would love to trade back and pick up some of these guys. I would like to trade
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
Depending on who's there and how far back it is, I would not be opposed to trading back. But at the same time, accumulating these picks, it's great to have them. It fills needs on paper. But if they can't perform on the field, then it's telling me right now you'd wouldn't have rather have Cooper DeJean than any of those three guys I just mentioned.
Right.
And that's who we gave up. We
Yeah.
gave up the opportunity to pick Cooper DeJean over those three guys that we had selected.
Yeah.
So, and plus in division as well. So that's a tough one, right?
There's
So,
there's a reason when you look at the trade value charts, you're and I'll just put it into dollars and cents. You're basically paying like $100 for pick number one. And by the time you get to pick 40, you're paying like, what is it, $20,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And by the time you get to pick 90, you're paying $1. I mean, that really accurately portrays the cliff drop between the likelihood of a first round pick versus a third round pick. It's not steady. It's like this, and then it's like this, and then it's all the way just out of sight by the time you're at the fifth round. You're right. Statistically, man, they look good. They look like they're going to fill needs and plug holes, and a lot of times they do. But boy, statistically, you're playing with fire at that point. So,
again, I'm obviously, I would want more picks than not.
right.
Obviously, I
Yeah.
want more picks than not. I'm not a huge fan of trading away picks, especially for older players. I'm not a now. Grant, we did that with Tunsil. We did that with Lattimore. Tunsil looks like it's worked out. Lattimore not so much so. I understand why we did those.
Right.
In the moment, I was fine with those. And Debo even, right? I'm fine with those moves. But if you're trying to build long term, it is through the draft. It's
Yep.
been consistently through the draft. I don't know. Trading out of seven, man, that just seems like I don't know. This is, and I guarantee you, Adam Peters and Dan Quinn, they're probably losing sleep over these decisions, and we're over here stressing out about it, trying to think, well, what's the best way to do this? Heck, we don't even know about it, and we're not getting paid the millions of dollars to worry about it.
The one thing I will say, by sitting at 7, while you may miss out on a blue chipper, right? You're statistically likely to catch an all pro at
Mhm.
7. By being so high on the draft, when you move back to the 11-14 range or the 20 with a double trade, right? You're still at the 20 spot, basically in that legit, air quotes, legit first round kind of a guy. So from a statistical standpoint, you're still likely to get a Pro Bowl level kind of a guy at 20 and with the additional other guys. So it's not quite the same as if you were sitting at 15 or 20 and you're trading back into essentially second round territory at that point. It does change your odds a little bit.
All right, anything else?
No, thank you everybody for watching. I really enjoyed getting to talk the draft tonight, and man, it's coming up. It's not far away. We're getting fairly close to this thing.
All right, please make sure you are subscribed to the Pro Football Enterprises YouTube channel. These are a couple of Ben's most recent videos. He's done draft profiles on I don't even know how many guys at this point, but it's a lot of guys. These are just a handful of them. He's done 4 round mocks on multiple different teams, him, Austin Freed, and Shane Ratliff. So please, or I see Simon is on a couple of these videos too. So please go check out these videos. It's great content that Ben is putting out. Also throughout Box Score Network. Ben has been featured on multiple videos with the Box Score Network over the past week or two. So please go check them out as well. And we will see you next week, hopefully. So, as long as everyone's still well, we'll see you all next week. Probably with that's probably going to be close to our last mock draft, if I had to guess. So we might do one, at least one more of those, if not two. So stay tuned for next week. Also, next week we should be talking about new uniforms. So keep an eye out for that as well.
All right.